Hello everyone. If you're watching this, you missed day 1 of our week 8 computer science principles class and you're catching up. Let's go ahead and talk about what you missed. Today we wrapped up some loose ends from last week in terms of technical information about the internet with our review of IETF, RFCs, and URLs. So if those mean nothing to you, strap in. We're going to be going over those first. And then we devoted the rest of our class period to working on our one-pager project, which is assignment 020701 and is due Wednesday the 21st. And I will go over that in just a second with you in this video. There's also a journal due the 25th, which is a Sunday, so please check that out on your own and make sure you're working on that. There are some important internet terms on there, and we are trying to wrap up our internet unit this week. Next class is going to be our last internet class, and next week we are moving on to bigger and better things. Alrighty. So to start off with, we reviewed what IETF and RFCs are. So this kind of strikes at the heart of that initial question we posed all the way back in the beginning of the unit, which is who controls the internet? Is it aliens? Is it elves? Is it the government? Turns out none of those answers are correct. In fact, the organization in charge of the technical aspects of the internet, or controlling the actual protocols that make it run, is called IETF, the Internet Engineering Task Force. This is an independent organization composed of various interdisciplinary engineers who review and approve various protocol changes that are then implemented into the whole system. This is a website that's publicly available. That is the RFC, or Request for Comment, index of every single proposed change to the internet ever since its inception. So there's some really interesting stuff in here. I highly recommend you guys take a look at this if you didn't get a chance to. And some really cool stuff can be found here. If you go to the IETF's main site by just searching IETF on the internet, you can even search for specific RFCs. So if you go to the search engine here, you can request a keyword, like maybe something we talked about, such as TCP, and you can see every single request for comment that's come up that has anything to do with TCP and how it's evolved over time. So right here, this is kind of the standard that's been set on September 1981, and we've been following it ever since. And these are all the various changes that have occurred to it. So this is something interesting for you to check out. You also need to know those two terms. So IETF, the Internet Engineering Task Force, and RFCs, requests for comments, and anybody can participate in those. You can comment on any proposed change to the internet, and your voice will be taken into account. So maybe keep an eye out. Maybe something interesting will pop up. Alright, real quick, this is review from last week. You should know that at the bottom we have the physical internet over here. On top is the internet protocol addressing everything you send. The TCP and UDP protocols work to separate large chunks of information into smaller bits that can then be manageably sent through the network and then reassembled on the other end. And up here we have DNS and HTTP and any other way. All of these things are ways to kind of get information that we're not going to be talking about in this class. But we do need to cover one more thing, which works with DNS and HTTP to kind of facilitate their function. And that thing is the URL, the Universal Resource Locator. That is the name we give this particular addressing scheme that we're also used to when we type it into our browsers. You do need to know what's going on here. So everything over here on the left, the subdomain domain, top-level domain, all of these things are for the DNS. The DNS uses these to resolve to a particular IP address, which will then point your computer to communicate with a server somewhere out there in the world, another computer. So all of this relates to DNS information. Anything after the slash over here is called a directory, and all of those point to specific files or folders within the target computer that you're trying to access. So the server will go, okay, you're trying to go to the DFW folder or page, let me pull that up for you. or maybe they'll say you don't have permission or I don't have it. But at any rate, this is what the HTTP protocol will use to figure out that GET request. It'll say, get me DFW, please. And then the server will respond to that particular request. Now, the way the actual domains over here are laid out is important to understand. Over here, all the way on the right, you have your top level domain. This is going to be your .com, .net, .edu, whatever it might be. Next is the first subdomain. Usually we just call it the domain, which might be OpenTable, or it could be Google, or whatever. The name of the website goes here. Then you will have your second subdomain. In this case, it's www. But in many cases, you have more than one. At any rate, the most important thing to keep in mind is from the top level domain, which is all the way on the right, you count to the left, which is the opposite of the way we read, so oftentimes people get confused. Be careful. Top level domain is all the way on the right, subdomain, second subdomain. Or you can think of this as top level domain, second level domain, third level domain, and so on and so forth. Over here is your protocol. It is not part of this whole thing. It simply tells you what protocol we're using to decode it. All right, so that takes us through URL. Now let's talk about activity. So you guys are taking on the role of a chief technology advisor to a political candidate. What you need to do is you need to advise them on all things technical that they do not have time to study in great detail. You're going to produce what is called a one-pager, which is a succinct distillation of information into something that the candidate can use to quickly make a decision, rather than having to understand all the particular details and technical aspects of the topic. So you have three options here. You can pick net neutrality, internet censorship, or the digital divide. From there, you need to do some research. I give you some optional sources. You don't have to use these, but you can. Down here, I do ask that you have at least 4 sources, so you can use the 3 I provided and 1 extra that you find yourself, or you can find more than 1 and not use some of those. That's fine. Right here is the concept bank. You should, at some point, be talking about some of these things in your one-pager. All of these topics have technical implications, and your job is to figure out how to present that information in a way that a layperson could understand it easily. Your actual deliverable is down below. There's also a rubric all the way at the bottom, so please review that when you have a chance. But the actual deliverable is right here. It's titled one-pager. Please stick to that. It should be 1 page long. That means you need to be succinct, and you need to be clear. So you need to use every word wisely and make sure that the information you're providing is really the core, most important, most relevant thing that you're trying to say. Please do not give me one-word bullets. Those are usually impossible to discern or decipher and will typically result in a poor grade. I am allowing bullet points, however. If you can use them wisely and make them descriptive, they're a great way to communicate information quickly and not take up as much space. You need to put in your core information here, your impacted groups, your technical information, and then make a policy recommendation along with who's going to benefit and who's going to be harmed. Please note that you need to remove all the information in italics before you submit. That way it looks nice and professional. So all of these directions you replace with your answers, and that is going to be your submittable. All right. Please let me know if you guys have any questions. Once again, this is due Wednesday by midnight. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day, and I'll see you guys later.